This week on Ask Kristen, I'm coming at you from a rooftop in Brooklyn. And for that reason, oh God, what was that sound? I'm just alone on a rooftop in Brooklyn about to read some comments about pubic hair. So let's jump right in, shall we? Because sooner or later, someone's probably gonna try to kick me off this roof. Thanks to everybody who commented on last week's Ask Kristen video, why do women shave their pubes? Not surprisingly, it generated a lot of conversation. Excuse you, honking truck. True Diva 18 had this to say: the feminist in me says that removing the hair is stupid because it's supposed to be there to protect me from yeast infections and other issues, but the girly girl in me says take it off because it's seen as disgusting by society. Girl, you just do you. Releni21 had this to say: I don't think pubic hair is bad, but sometimes hair can get in the way. I feel like the most important thing is to not feel pressurized into removing or keeping your hair. Just do whatever you're comfortable with. Why not? Play around. Go to town. Quarter Coyote asked, why is it that the only place society doesn't want women to shave is the top of their heads? Have you checked out my videos? Why do women have long hair and why do men have short hair? This week's Ask Kristen question is coming from Dylan Dries, who says, I've got a hard question for Kristen. What's the best way and time to bring up the beginning of a female's menstrual cycle to a young girl? I'm a single father and I know at some point I have to have this talk with my daughter, age 7, and I'm naturally unprepared. Some advice would be greatly appreciated in a stuff your mom isn't around to tell you situation. Thanks, Kristen, you are awesome. Gold star to you for even wanting to have this conversation in the first place. Stuff I've Never Told You, the podcast, has done an entire episode on giving kids the talk, all about sex and puberty and what's not. For a more in-depth look or listen to this topic, I highly recommend you click on the link floating somewhere around my head right now, and that'll take you straight to the podcast. You need to start having these conversations, plural, with her as soon as possible because her period could actually come as early as 8 or 9 years old. A lot of sex educators advise parents to not make the whole puberty and sex one big, scary load of information that is delivered to them one time in a very awkward setting, and you never really talk about it again. Maybe one good way to kick off this conversation is kind of finding out what she knows about puberty. Find out whether or not she's learning about any of this stuff in school, and possibly dovetail your conversations with whatever folks at school are teaching her. Hopefully not her fellow students. Hopefully there are trained teachers teaching her these things. But obviously we are in the United States and that is not a guarantee. For some really great down-to-earth info on menstruation, female anatomy, etc., I highly recommend going to kidshealth.org. It's sponsored by the Nemers Foundation. They're a fabulous resource for these kinds of topics, putting it in language that kids will understand. For a little bit more of an adult resource, I highly recommend Go Ask Alice out of Columbia University's health department. They do a fantastic job answering all of these questions that students have actually asked them about periods, sex, consent, STDs, whatever it might be. Great resource for you to have on hand as she gets older and becomes a teenager, because nothing is easier than living with a teenage girl. I know when I first learned about menstruation and sex, it was in the setting of one big awkward conversation, and I left, I kid you not, praying to God that I would not get a period. Dude, please do me a solid. I don't need that. If it had been more of a gradual conversation, my parents talking to me about bodies and puberty and what to expect and normalizing those kinds of topics, I would have been a lot more comfortable. I'm also very pro not using genital euphemisms around kids. If you're gonna talk about vaginas and penises, call them vaginas and penises. Don't call them the private parts. Try to use language that doesn't imply that she should be ashamed at all of these kinds of changes that will soon be happening to her body. One final resource that might be really good for you to check out, especially since you're a single dad trying to talk to your daughter about these girlier kinds of things, menstrual toolkits. Essentially, they're period starter kits for girls that might include things like information on how to use pads and tampons, what to expect during periods, things about PMS, cramping, etc., and also information for parents. If she has any questions and wants to ask me directly, you can simply email me at momstuff@howstuffworks.com. Good luck, Dylan, and everybody else. If you have advice for Dylan as well, let me know in the comments below. And as always, ask me your questions so I can give you some answers. Next time, not from the top of a Brooklyn roof. That's very loud. Just doing this on a rooftop.